It's all but official. Furiosa is a commercial flop only after 2 weeks in movie theaters. The typical pundits already begun their inevitable tap dance, as you'd expect, citing post pandemic fears about enclosed spaces, the detrimental effects of streaming, and the too long delay between Fury Road and the current film, which is all true. It's all true, and there's nothing wrong with bringing that up. But the problem is they're missing the fundamental aspect of why Furiosa failed. And it boils down to four simple words. Nobody cares about Furiosa. Let's discuss. Furiosa first appeared in the film Mad Max Fury Road as a supporting character who worked for the film's villain, a gentleman by the name of Immortan Joe. And you've seen him. He's pasty white. He's got this face mask. It looks really cool, really awesome, very villainous. She worked as a driver, a fighter, and all-around badass. Her distinctive look is what set her apart. She got the shaved head, you got the black makeup over the eye and the forehead, and you have that trademark cybernetic prosthetic arm, which is all cool. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Looks good, but there's something missing in that ingredient of putting the character together that turns her from a cool badass, which she looks like, to someone who warrants a spin-off, somebody who warrants following up and getting to know her a little bit better. And the thing that's missing is an emotional hook. Every memorable character needs an emotional hook because it's emotion that drives the human condition. Everything we say and everything we do starts with the emotion. It's the background, it's the engine that makes the whole thing go. Emotion creates true relatability between the character and the audience, and if you don't have that, all you have is basically a paper cutout. Somebody looks good, but doesn't have that spark that says, I understand this person and I want to get behind them. Let's take a look at famous characters because we're eventually going to tie this back into comic books and superheroes and what have you. Batman is driven by the grief and anger over the loss of his parents. So that's a pretty straightforward one. Everybody knows that story. Spider-Man is driven by the guilt of not stopping the robber who would eventually come to kill his Uncle Ben. Even though we talk about great power comes great responsibility, which is true, it's the death of Uncle Ben which forces that lesson on Peter in a way that he'd never thought of before. Supergirl, move over to DC, is constantly driven to prove herself in the shadow of her more well-known cousin, Superman, when his original ship was supposed to come after her, and then there was a mix-up, and we all know that story. She eventually came later, and even though she was supposed to be the caretaker, it didn't work out, and now she's always struggling to catch up, it seems like. Let's move over to the X-Men, back on Marvel. Who are they? They are people who are just striving to live in a world that hates them simply for the fact that they're born and they could potentially pose a threat to humanity. So that fear is earned, but at the same time, they didn't have any choice in the matter. And so everybody understands that idea of being an outsider and also being feared for being different. It always comes back to emotion. Emotion motivates everything. When a character doesn't have a clear emotional foundation to motivate their actions, they may look cool, they may have a great personality, and their adventures may be thrilling, but they'll wind up as forgettable as Tim Sheridan's run on Alan Scott, the Green Lantern. Sorry, Tim. Ouch. You deserve that one. What about Mad Max? I mean, he's a stoic character. Furiosa is part of the same story as Mad Max, and he doesn't really express a whole lot of emotion, doesn't talk a lot, doesn't say a lot of those things. Why is it people remember him, but they don't remember her? Is this some kind of sexist thing? No, it's not, because Mad Max is A, not a new character, B, he had an entire 3-part trilogy that gave you all the emotional depth you can think of. In the original Mad Max film, Max loses his wife, his child, and his best friend to a merciless biker gang. So already he's dealing with a lot of grief and loss and all the pain that comes with it. In the sequel, The Road Warrior, Max has survived after the world fell apart, which is, part of the whole concept there. But when he decides to help a small colony relocate to greener pastures, and I mean that metaphorically speaking, he's rewarded by being betrayed because they use him as bait and didn't tell him. In the final Mad Max film, Thunderdome, or I should say Beyond Thunderdome, Max battles Entity, played by the great Tina Turner, to save a group of children, which gives Max a chance to make up for the child he couldn't save in the first film. At every step of the way, in every film, Max's journey has a strong emotional core of a hero fighting the elements, the things that are around him in the world that he inhabits, and the pain of constant betrayal and loss. But you might ask, wait a minute, Furiosa is a hero. Why can't they be good enough? Yes, she is a hero. She is. Furiosa is a hero in the most basic sense of the word because she saves innocent people from a bad man. This is true. But that's not enough. Anyone can do a good deed if they have decent moral compass and the tools to get that deed in action. But it's the emotional motivation behind their actions to connect with an audience. It's that connection that's missing. That's why Furiosa is flopping. It's not a girl boss problem or movie theater experience problem. In a nutshell, Fury Road established a character who simply didn't give viewers enough reason to care about her. All right, so Comical Opinions is a comics channel. What does what does Furiosa have to do with comics? Uh, that's a good question. And the reason we're going to make that connection is because it has everything to do with modern comics, especially at Marvel and DC. We hear ad nauseum that newer characters are popular. At least we're being told that they're popular but they can't maintain sales. Why? Because the modern crop of creators can't or won't develop the emotional engine that drives their new creations forward. Let's take some examples. Kamala Khan, aka Ms. Marvel, started off as a spiritual successor, maybe, to Peter Parker with an authentic personality, strange powers granted by fate, and a lived-in circle of friends and family, which all sounds very familiar. It's all good. But her entire personality and motivation for taking on a hero role could be summed up in one phrase: fangirl. She idolizes Captain Marvel and the Avengers. She works hard to do her heroes proud, and by extension, her family. These are all good traits that make her a respectable person, but at best, an ordinary person, which translates to forgettable. What's missing? Kamala Khan needs her Uncle Ben moment to set the course for the rest of her life. A defining incident that never goes away and colors everything she does. Something that motivates her, something that hits her emotional core down to its very roots that she can't shake away. Let's take another example. Harley Quinn, the Harley problem. DC isn't free from blame on this front. Arguably one of the most popular characters, popular, and I say that in air quotes, is Harley Quinn. And yet she can't get her comic sales to go beyond mediocre to abysmal, is probably the better way to put it. Why? The very foundation of Harley's existence was to be the Joker's misused and abused gangster girlfriend. DC put a sort of a half-hearted amount of focus in separating Harley from Joker, fine. Leading on the concept of a woman freeing herself from oppression and an abusive relationship, also fine. But missed the boat on giving her existence any meaning without the Joker. Instead of using the hurt of her separation to forge a new path, Harley's drifted from one zany personality to the next, waffling between semi-villain and semi-hero. In every sense of the word, Harley is rudderless. Now, you couldn't describe her personality with any consistency, nor could you accurately say if she's a hero or a villain. In effect, Harley is nothing because DC tries to make her everything. It's a waste. Now, wait a minute. You might say, well, why are you always picking on the girls? Is it a girl problem? Why are you picking on the girls? No, it's not a girl problem. It's not a girl boss problem. It's an every character problem. It is, in fact, a bad writing problem. Let's look at examples of some boys. Fine. Let's take a look at some boys over at Marvel and DC. For example, Dan Slott went out of his way to brag mightily about his new creation, Bailey Briggs, who's known as Spider-Boy. It's the bestest ever Marvel character that appeals to sort of the YA range of characters. His debut issue did well. It's fine. But let's not discount the whole concept of speculator bait. I mean, people want the number ones, they want the new characters, so there's definitely that factor in there as well. Since then, the sales have dropped off a cliff and not done well. Why? Because you're not going to win over fans with a sassy personality, which pretty much describes everything about Bailey. The very few issues that have done well leaned into the trauma of Bailey losing his entire existence, including his mother. Slott could have leaned into that trauma and made that the focus of Bailey's journey. Instead, the precious scamp spends way too much time trying to reestablish himself as Spider-Man's sidekick. So Bailey's place in Spider-Lore feels unearned and annoying. Let's move over to DC. Tom Taylor and the laughable DC marketing machine aren't free from blame here. They went into overdrive after taking over John Kent from the disastrous Bendis run where he was aged up in an alternate dimension. And they said, let's do something neat with him. And what did they come up with? Let's make him gay. That's basically the extent of their idea. And we also saw how well that turned out. Basically canceled after, I believe it was 16 issues, and maybe gave Tom Taylor a 6-issue miniseries to make up the differential. It was just a mess. Why didn't that turn out so well? Because John Kent never should have been aged up in the first place. Okay, that's a Bendis problem. It's a DC problem. But even if you accept that outcome, John had a ready-made opportunity under Tom Taylor to explore the pain of losing his parents for years, addressing the trauma inflicted on him by Ultraman and eventually turned John, I should say, into a different kind of Superman, born of his father but shaped by a very different upbringing. Instead, Taylor and DC leaned all in on John's coming out, completely ignoring the traumatic events of his recent past, so his behavior reads as unsympathetic and shallow. So what's the lesson here? Fans won't come back out for characters they don't care about. To get fans to care, you have to create an emotional hook that the audience can relate to. Otherwise, it's all superficial flash that leads to poor retention and money-losing output. So that's it. So what do you think? Is there a girl boss problem? I think not. It's really probably more along the lines of just bad writing problem. Because a writer who doesn't know how to create a character with an emotional core basically doesn't know how to do their job. But let us know what you think in the comments section. Are any of the characters who are referenced in this video better than I'm giving them credit for? Or are they worse than I'm giving them credit for? Now, let's move over to the rest of the newsletter. Welcome back to the rest of the newsletter. If you are already subscribed to our newsletter, you already know because you received the notification on Saturday and you were given the upload audio version of our pick of the week. And the pick of the week is Love Me, a romance story #2 from Mad Cave Studios. I'm just really enjoying this comic, and I think we can all agree that it has a strong emotional core. Hey, taking it back to the main op-ed, that you're instantly on JoJo's side, understanding who he is, what he's about, what he's missing in his life, and what he's willing to do to fight to get it. This is just a sweet, amazingly sweet and wholesome story about a robot. Surprises the heck out of me how well this comic is turning out. So if you haven't already, pick up this comic. If you want to get the audio version for our podcast and stay up to date on every pick of the week, please subscribe to the newsletter. There's a link down in the description. Moving on to the reviews last week, it was a short week because it was a holiday week, but we do have our links in the newsletter so you can read each and every one of those reviews, as well as watch them on YouTube if you so choose. Now let's talk about what's coming up this week. A little bit of a longer week. When I mean people, I mean the publishers are starting to catch up. And so we have Unholy Nightmare #1, and that's an indie submission. We have Vampirella Dark Reflection #1 from Dynamite Comics, and Space Ghost #2 also from Dynamite Comics. I have to say, we like Space Ghost #1 probably better than Thundercats. So I'm interested to see if they can keep up that level of storytelling and quality. We have Guma, The Beginning of Her #7 from Titan. Horror and Fantasy Illustrated Plum Island from Zenescope. This is a catch-up from a couple weeks ago. Scarlet #1 from Image Comics and Skybound. That is their miniseries based on Scarlet from G.I. Joe, and that's a new writer. It's a new miniseries with a reputation for maybe not having the best stories, but we'll see how that turns out. And then Gunslinger Spawn #32 from Image, and The Scorch #30 also from Image. From Mad Cave, we have Charred Remains #6 and The Mammoth #1, which is new, also from Mad Cave Studios. And this week, we're going to do something a little different on the review front. We're going to review just one each, one Marvel comic and one DC comic. There are polls on our YouTube channel on the community tab. If you'd like to vote and you decide which comic we're going to review this week from each of those two publishers, go to our YouTube page, or our YouTube channel, I should say. Check out the polls, vote, let us know which one you would prefer that we review, and that's the one we're going to go with. So far, not surprised, in Marvel, the lead is Ultimates #1 from Jonathan Hickman. And on the DC side, surprising me at least, the winner so far at least is in the very early lead is Shazam #12. Well, we'll see how that turns out. So that's our newsletter for the week. Thank you very much for joining. Again, please leave a comment below and let us know what you think about our op-ed about Furiosa, the problem with characters that don't have an emotional hook, and how that problem is prevalent almost across the board in all of Western comics, as well as in particular Marvel and DC. Thank you very much for joining. I'm Gabe Hernandez, your publisher in EIC. You have a great day.